So a few years ago, I was co-chairing our women's leadership group at our company. And I remember this one meeting we had. We're all kind of sitting around the table, debating the topics of our next big conference. And one woman says, sponsorship. We have to be sure we talk about sponsorship. And another one says, executive presence. We also have to be sure we talk about executive presence. And I was like, wine. Can we just be sure we have enough wine? No, but here's what I was also thinking. Why are we still talking about the same things that we've essentially been talking about for the last 30 years? Executive presence and networking and sponsorship and lean in. Yes, we absolutely have a gender inequality issue in the workplace. When you have more CEOs named Dave than female CEOs, yeah, that's kind of a problem. But that's not the truth I'm here to expose. I'm here to tell you a harsher, cringier kind of truth. We are trying to resolve it the wrong way. Now, a few years ago, also on a Friday, I was working from home. I was in sort of that glide into the weekend mode when my boss texts me. Can we talk? He calls me up and he says, hey, this is kind of heavy for a Friday, but I've decided to leave the company, and I want to know if it's okay if I recommend you as our next COO. I paused. I replied, no, thank you. Why? Why in the hell would I turn down such a prestigious opportunity like this? Because I quickly ran the compromise calculation in my head. X equals career, Y equals everything else. I'm good where I'm at. I want you to be honest. Raise your hand if you've ever run the compromise calculation in your head. Do you say things to yourself like, if I go for a bigger job, I might have to compromise things like my family or my health or even who I am? We're lowering our hands, at least halfway, but halfway is too far. We're creating a problem we're never going to solve. The truth is, the biggest reason we have a gender inequality issue in the workplace isn't because women are being held down. It's because we're opting down. And I know, not really making a lot of friends right now. But bear with me, because it's not really our fault. And I do have a solution. But first, I want to assure you, it's not just you or I that's held ourselves back. A team at Harvard verified this too. They set out to understand, why are women being promoted less often than men? And what they found was that women actually believe they can attain the high-level positions just as much as the men do. But the big difference was that women were far more likely to expect negative trade-offs as a result. And of course, gender inequality, it doesn't just impact women. In a McKinsey study, they estimated that if we were to achieve gender parity in the workplace by the year 2025, we could add $12 trillion to the global economy. $12 trillion. Do you know that's like 600 billion bottles of Cabernet we could add to all those women's conferences? You see, here's what we do. We often feel like we have to solve big problems with big solutions. We throw these lavish Super Women of the Year conferences, and companies spend $8 billion a year on diversity training. And we have entire industries devoted to diversity and gender. And that's not necessarily what we need. So what do we need? We need a new modern career playbook. One that doesn't necessarily ask you to lean in, but one that gives you permission to lean in a totally different way. What is it? Authenticity. You just hear a little riff, kumbaya. You're over here like meditating. Well, snap out of it. That's actually not what I'm talking about. No, authenticity actually doesn't just mean being yourself. It's a much more nuanced and powerful concept. The origin of the word is Greek. It's authentikos, which means to be genuine, original, and authoritative. Authenticity is like this beautiful intersection of being yourself, being badass. It's like if Joe Exotic had a baby with Kamala Harris. I'm going to help you see the power that authenticity has to change everything. So remember how I told you I said no thank you to that COO position? Well, I thought about it over the weekend, and I decided to say yes. I realized that the reason I had said no was that I was worried I was going to have to fit into this mold, this sort of club I was going to have to enter into. And in this club, I feared my ego would grow, and my calendar would overflow, and my home life would become a shit show, and my personality might even start to blow. And I didn't want that. But then it hit me. You shouldn't not do something because you hate the way it was done before. You can do it your own way. Now, by this point, I had realized that being authentic was, well, it was kind of fun. But what I was starting to realize was that doing authentic was extremely powerful. So minutes after I took that new role, I had this critical, like, make it or break it contract negotiation. I had no clue what to do. And I remember sitting down with their senior executive. For purposes here, we'll just call him Dave. And I said to Dave, what's important to you in this negotiation? And after he responded and kind of spilled his guts, turned the question back on me. When out of my mouth poured, well, our financials are struggling, and if I can negotiate this deal without a price increase, I'll have a good shot at becoming the next CEO. I really want to become the next CEO? I had thrown myself fully and authentically right at poor Dave. I was like when you're driving down the road, right, and a deer comes out, smashes against your windshield. Several months later, though, I completed that negotiation with a highly successful outcome. Why? Because Dave is human, and he largely pushed that deal through because he wanted to me to get that CEO position as well. It was in that moment that I realized authenticity isn't just some passive thing. I realized I could use authenticity as my secret weapon. So I started to use my authenticity everywhere. I was like a ninja in a gunfight, from high-stakes negotiations to my LinkedIn profile, from introductions and meetings to, well, giving big, prestigious talks. And time again, it resulted in success. Now, was it all roses? No, but I still can tell you, even as somebody who failed miserably as an actuary in her first career, the odds were definitely starting to tip in my favor. In fact, I did get that CEO position. I got to lead a team of about 1,000 people, and I'm so proud to say that with my authenticity leading the way, we went from struggling pretty big time to tripling earnings and sending employee engagement scores skyrocketing in just 3 years. And more importantly, I stayed married, my kids thrived, my health was never better, and I stayed me. Using authenticity as my secret weapon, I felt like it changed the entire game. I felt like I went from this game where I was worried about having to do the things that might make me sell out to a game where I was just focused on doing the things that would make me stand out. The compromise calculation, it no longer added up for me anymore. Now, I know what you're probably thinking right now. Awesome, Erin. So happy for you. You have no idea the company I work for. I work with a bunch of jerks, and they're all about profits. What if I were to prove to you that authenticity isn't just some elusive, fluffy strategy? Let me throw a little data at you. First, work by Francis Frey showed that authenticity is one of 3 pillars to creating trust. Second, a Harvard Business Review paper showed that companies with higher trust had 76% higher employee engagement. And lastly, in a Gallup study, they showed that companies with higher employee engagement were 21% more profitable. Authenticity equals money. Now, if I just kind of put you to sleep a little bit with that little data piece, let me also just throw a little Oprah bomb at you. Oprah once said, "I had no idea that being your authentic self could have made me as rich as I've become. If I had, I'd have done it a lot sooner." People, this is what it comes down to. Companies want results, and leaders in those companies want results, and they don't actually care what playbook you use to get there. It's just that for some reason, we still largely preach this decades-old career playbook. I am giving you permission to hurl aside that crusty old playbook. The executive presence and the politics and the sponsorship, the tough-ass leadership and the martyrdom. Instead, I want you to do things your own way. I want you to create your own authenticity playbook. And don't worry, I'm going to help you get started in writing that book with your first 3 plays. All right, play number 1. Stop playing business buzzword bingo. In your resume, your LinkedIn profile, introductions and meetings. I bet I can guess what your LinkedIn profile looks like. Does it look something like this? Ooh, flawless execution. Like proven experience? Like, what the heck is that? Everybody says it. Instead, try telling a story or make fun of yourself a little bit. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, every single one of my position summaries are short stories instead of buzzwords. Try it. Just watch people connect and smile and become intrigued. And I promise you'll stand out from all the other schmucks using the same stuffy BS. All right, play number 2. Change your OOO message. You know, your oblivious outage message. Like, change it to something like, or instead of saying like, "I will be out of the office. I will get back to you as soon as I can." Change it to something like, "Taking a much needed break from all the craziness. I'll get back to you when I'm well rested and less cranky." Just a simple change like that, what happens is it starts to give yourself permission and others permission to be more authentic. Not to mention, take a real vacation. Play number 3, include your children in your work. Get their input on a project you're working on, or use their everyday stories as metaphors and inspiration to those around you. If you have to travel, consider taking them with you. Like the time about a year ago, literally just 2 days before this conference I was speaking at, I realized my kids didn't have school that day, and I had no coverage. Now, the old Erin would have freaked out. But using my new authenticity playbook, I was like, well, I'll take them with me. And here's the thing. Bringing them with me didn't just help me solve my personal problem. Their presence at my talk was way more inspiring than anything I actually said that day. In fact, I include my children all the time. We actually had to do an application video for this talk, and I asked them to help me direct it. I want to give you a quick backstage look.
Say kind of this is a bit heavy for a Friday, and that kind of implies that it's a Friday. And you don't have to like, boom, Friday.
Okay, so how should I start it off?
And plus, the time that they get it,
they might not see it on Friday.
That's a good point too. I like that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking in my
So
mind.
just say it's.
Yeah, but you were. Yeah, we gotta squeeze this in a lot.
Can you tell who is the boss in that video? Definitely not me. Here's the thing, at the end of the day, authenticity is about exposing who you are when people least expect it. Experiment, get curious, just try it. And do not give me the excuse that the leaders around you aren't authentic. Were the leaders around me authentic? Mostly, hell no. But here's the very best thing about authenticity. It's incredibly contagious. What happens is when you start to do it, you unlock this power that's dormant inside of you and inside of others, including those above you. Malcolm Gladwell studied what caused major tipping points in history. And what he found was so fascinating. It isn't the big things that make things tip. It's the small things that cause big transformation. Imagine what your career graph might look like if you embraced and encouraged authenticity. You'd no longer have to opt down because you feared you're going to have to compromise to rise. Using authenticity as your new playbook, you can transform your career. You can transform our gender inequality issue. You can transform humanity. Look at the challenges you face in the workplace differently. Stop playing a game you don't want to play. Tip that damn graph. Do things your own way. Thank you.